So it's a great pleasure for me to present Orfeo ToolBox. It's a roadmap for the next years, and I hope we will have some discussion after that. First, I present myself. I'm Yannick. I work in Toulouse at CNES, the Space French Agency, which is a big technical center. We're out near 2,000 engineers working in every field of space system. Especially, I work in a remote sensing area in a department where we are interested in extracting valuable information from images, all kind of optical images and also SAR images. So today it's a talk about Orfeo ToolBox, which is quite an old tool. You may know, I think, Orfeo ToolBox, some of you. And we'll try to present some outlines on future versions. So, short reminder for those who don't know Orfeo ToolBox. Orfeo ToolBox is a library of applications for remote sensing that can do for you almost all the tasks you want to do on satellite images or optical images or SAR images, from processing to extracting information, for example, with segmentation or classification framework. Orfeo ToolBox is more than 15 years old, but it was easiest to find a nice cake with a 15 years. And it has been funded and developed mainly by CNES, by my company, in the frame of Orfeo program. Orfeo program was a program to help people use very high resolution imagery of Pleiad satellites in 2006. So it has been developed since then, and it couldn't have been developed without the help of very good libraries like GDAL, like ITK, because OTB is kind of inheritance of ITK. ITK, for those who don't know, is medical image processing library, and there are a lot of common things between spatial image and satellite image and medical images. From nearly the beginning, Orfeo ToolBox has been an open source software. It's under Apache license, and is member of OSGeo since 2017. It has been developed for maximum reach. That means to address both small studies, when you work on small images, to big data, time series and so on. Also to address both scientific and operational work. So a few words on very high imagery, high resolution imagery. It has been designed, as I said, for Pleiad, but in fact it can handle almost any image that GDAL can read. And for pre-processing, the idea is that most of you maybe used some georeference data, some analysis-ready data, but when you go from the raw satellite data to this calibrated image, you need to pre-process images to remove atmospherical effects. You need to auto-rectify to georeference image. You also need to merge, for example, here the high-resolution panchromatic image with the less defined multispectral image. This kind of magic. Also, at CNES, OTB is a kind of building block for big data processing chains and distribution services portals. As you know, Copernicus data, Sentinel-2, 1, etc. are distributed by a lot of platform of hub. At CNES, we have two services that compute and deliver this kind of data. And Orfeo ToolBox is used in a processing chain to remove, to detect clouds and also to calibrate image and remove atmospherical effects. Sorry. It's also used in big processing chains or framework to compute level 3 data, like this land cover map. And every year it's used to compute this kind of map over France, and you have to deal with hundreds of Sentinel-2 tiles, a lot of dates, and so it's a big amount of data. Orfeo ToolBox is also used in a lot of academic works, and every year we see that people produce articles and have used Orfeo ToolBox for their studies. So we are very fan of that. And since we gave training sessions, I think we gave about 30 training sessions in conferences, like the one we gave in Phosphorgy on Monday. So from a few hours to 2, 3, or 4, 5 days of training. And it's an occasion to meet people and to build this user community. Of course, every time we come at Phosphorgy, we meet a lot of people, have very nice discussions. It's always a pleasure to meet you. We also organize our own user days every year, every 2 years, it depends. It's the occasion to try to understand what people do with our software, to drive the roadmap, and that's the subject of the discussion of today. So, wow, that's a huge elephant. It's a huge and a little bit elongated Creative Commons elephant. And as you see, some people may think that really OTB became maybe too big. We had a lot of people having difficulties to install Orfeo ToolBox in their Python environment. A lot of people do things differently than 5 or 10 years before, so we have to adapt. We think that maybe we support too many operating systems, like different flavors of Linux, Windows, into versions, macOS, and it's a lot of work for the maintenance. There are also many dependencies because there are like 20 libraries in the Orfeo ToolBox build, so it's a lot of job to follow all the versions of the libraries. And in fact, the thing is, people do things quite differently now. People, even at CNES, develop a lot of tools in Python and not more in OTB. But we still have to keep OTB alive because it's used in a lot of subjects. And so we wanted to discuss with the users to find ways to have a better maintenance of Orfeo ToolBox. We made user surveys during the COVID years. The user days in 2021 at the end of the year, and now we have a quite clear idea on where we go. So that's what I'm going to present, because what I didn't say is the fact that we like elephants, and we don't want to put elephants in the zoo. So here are some solutions to save it. Okay, I realize that it's quite impressive, like in a few texts, it's big. So 3 axes, simplify maintenance. That is in fact a chance because it can help us to focus on the core features of a toolbox. I mean, no need to go further if there are a lot of tools that do the things better than us, but on the core features, it's important to maintain things in the right way. And also the other thing is to better integrate Orfeo ToolBox with Python. That's what we plan to do for the next version. So, first of all, we are going to remove some graphical interface. It's the best part is to remove code, simplify build, and we have already started that. In fact, we had graphical interface in Qt that were sometimes hard to maintain, even if they were automatically produced, generated. We had also a very nice imagery work called Monteverdi. Monteverdi was very efficient to open big images, even I think more efficient than JEDAL, but Monteverdi only process raster image, not all other kind of data. And now almost every people use QGIS. So we plan to drop all this and instead promote QGIS integration, OTB integration in QGIS. A few years ago, we improved the plugin because there were some little bugs that prevent people from doing things correctly. So now it works fine. During the workshop Monday, people could have tested it, and it's working fine. It allows you to launch every application you have installed. Other aspect, it's macOS. I think macOS is quite used in the GIS community, but not much in remote sensing. And according to the survey we made, there were less than 10% people using macOS, and for us, it's very hard to maintain because they change their architecture. The continuous integration is very complex to set up. And in fact, we don't have any users at CNES also of macOS, so we decided to drop it, but to offer a Docker image. And the Docker image is compatible with the two kind of architecture, ARM and Intel. So it's fine and better for deploying OTB if people want to use macOS. Second part of our strategy, our roadmap, is trying to go toward a more modular Orfeo ToolBox. That means that at now, if you download Orfeo ToolBox, you download almost 100 applications. You can also install some remote modules. There are tens of remote modules. Some of them are maintained quite regularly, others are not. So that's a lot of applications. Maybe we'll use 6 or 7 of them. That's also a lot of dependencies to package. If you want to compile it by yourself, it can be quite complex depending on the system you use and so on. And so we want to split this big Orfeo ToolBox in several packages. The first OTB core will contain the main applications that we may use, the core features that differentiate Orfeo ToolBox from other libraries. And we will have, for example, an OTB machine learning or something like that will contain machine learning algorithm, because even if a lot of people do machine learning with OTB, if you do it with another library like scikit-learn, it's fine, and you don't have to install OpenCV and so on. The idea is that all of these modules will be deployed as easily as unzipping the archive in your directory, and you will immediately have access to the new applications. And we will try to do the same for the remote modules in a way that if certain kind of application or certain module are less used, we could put them as deprecated or maybe as a remote module and don't give the same maintenance on it, and it can ease the maintenance and ease the build. The idea would be, our dream would be to kind of pip install OTB, but it's not yet possible. But we'll hope that for the users, the experience will be in this kind of experience. Last aspect is trying to have a more pythonic interface. Actually, from now, the interface is like that. If you want to use Orfeo ToolBox in Python, here we have 3 applications that are plugged in the pipeline. So no file is written or rendered this except the input and the output file. So that's quite fine. It's efficient, very streaming and so on. But it's quite verbose and not very Pythonic. So some developers prefer some lightest interface. But we have some people in our community, Rémi Cresson from INRAE, who developed a very nice wrapper called PyOTB, which wraps, in fact, the existing interface with more Pythonic functions, and this is the way we could have wrote the previous example. So it's easier to use, it's nicest, and maybe we will integrate it in the near future. The other thing about Python is that a lot of people complain that sometimes it's difficult to install it or to integrate with Python, but in fact, there are only some logs that need to be documented. First, the compilation of Python bindings, because OTB is delivered with compiled Python bindings, and it's quite easy to compile Python bindings. I think in next version we will do it at the install step. But for now, we just document it properly, and it can be enough for a lot of users. Another thing is the GDAL raster.io issue. I mean, if you use raster.io, for example, that depends on GDAL, you will have conflicts if you don't use the same GDAL than Orfeo ToolBox. Conflicts if you want to import both libraries. But there are some ways to solve that problem, and we had added these tips in the documentation so that users could benefit from better integration. Last thing is integration, for example, with NumPy. It's possible since a lot of versions, but people don't know always how to do it, and there are some the older example were not so adapted to a real case. So we improved the documentation, and so now from the cookbook you have more relevant information on that. So this was the way we think we are going to improve integration. Now a little state of actual version. The OTB 8.1.2 is being released now. The release candidate has been released, the tag has been put like end of last week. To remind you, the recent versions, in fact, the 8.0 version was a big version where we remove dependency to OSIM. We were only using a small part of that library. It was heavy to maintain, and now OTB is really powered by GDAL for reading and managing digital elevation model, for example, and part of metadata management too. The first 8.0 version has some problems of computing time, so we have two versions to correct some things, and now auto-rectification is faster than in previous seven versions, so it's quite cool. As I say, we have an official Docker component and some doc issues. And coming soon, the 8.2 version will integrate a new GDAL version and will integrate a full support of Pleiad Neo. On OTB 9, we'll drop the graphical interface, drop Mac support, and we'll bring the modules that I talk about. I think about 8 or 9 modules. And in the next, in the version after, we will, I think, improve the Python API. So that's nearly all. The thing is that if you don't know if you want to contribute, there is place to contribute. Place for contributors, for documentation, for testing, validating everything. For if you want to discuss of the strategy of the roadmap, you are welcome. So we have different ways to do that. If you want to start OTB, the good entry point is the main website and its documentation page, the cookbook. If you want to discuss, to share your experience, you are free to go on the user forum and post a message there, and the community will answer you, will discuss with you. And we have our own instance of GitLab where you can connect and contribute anything, and also find the remote modules that work with Orfeo ToolBox.